Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. I'm your host, Uncivil Law, a licensed attorney in Texas, Virginia, and before the United States Supreme Court. And I hope today is the day I earn that subscription. For today's stream, it is yet another legal news roundup where we attempt to give you all the legal news happening in your world so that you can be better legally informed about all the things that are going on in this great country and sometimes this great world of ours. And I hope you're having a great day. Just wanted to give a brief note that I noticed that Nick Ricada, my friend, invited me to his stream, but he invited me at 10:30 in the evening. And I was probably already asleep. Because, So he didn't exactly give me a lot of notice. I'll read his exact text message to me because I don't think he would mind. He sent 10:35 to be exact. 10:35, he sends me this notice for an 11 o'clock stream. So not doing really great here with the notification in advance, okay? He sends me a text that says short notice, but if you want to pop in tonight around midnight and discuss my lawsuit with Montegraph, that's my part, and anything else, you're welcome. Also, I can clear up the perceived hypocrisy and people can stop thinking I hate you, rolling on the floor laughing. So, yeah. I will say this about Nick. He is very bad with the text messages and responding to text messages and not really great with the phone calls or emails or basically any method of communication that I have with him. He is not really good about responding to things because I call and text Nick not totally infrequently. I try to, I'd say about once a week on average, maybe a little bit less than that. I could go through and do an exact, accounting of it. But, like once a week, I'll try to call him or text him. And with responding to his whole Montegraph lawsuit, like immediately after that video, like I sent him a text message just being like, hey, if you want to talk, I'm here and all the rest of it. And he just is really, really bad at responding to text messages. He's really bad at following up. And he's been this way ever since I've known him and before. It took me like 4 months or 5 months to get on his show. The first time I ever appeared on a show, way back when we were dealing with the Vic Mignogna lawsuit. And right, there was that whole controversy. And the reason it took 4 or 5 months is because the man doesn't respond to text messages. He doesn't respond to email, and he's really bad with the follow through. Now, he has a lot of reasons for that. He has 5 children, which goes a long way to that. He has a wife. He has a family. He has a channel of his own. And, I'm not the only thing going on in his life, to be sure. But I would like to note that the man is not very great with the text message follow through and not really great with responding to text messages or phone calls or calling you back or texting you back or scheduling things. And then he drops me an email at 10:35 being like, when you want to appear on my show tonight? And I'm like, I'm over here, counting sheep. So I sent him a text message back this morning letting him know that I was asleep and letting him know that I'd be happy to talk to him anytime, preferably with a little bit more advance notice. So all that good stuff. So, yeah. Nick is a good guy. I like Nick. Yeah, I watched a little bit of his program last night. I know what he said. His chat hates me right now. I noticed. They hate the ever living shit out of me right now. Sometimes they love me. Right now, the chat seems to hate me. Nick Ricada's chat seems to really hate me. At least the people that were in his chat last night, they were really, really derisive to me. And they really, really don't like me. And they think I'm a soy boy and a cock and don't know how to take a joke and all the rest of it. And weak and feeble and all the rest of it. Which to some degree, of course, is at least partially true. Because as we've talked about many, many times, I suffer from major depressive disorder. And so depression is a problem because depression somewhat influences your mood, as one would expect. And it has been a problem in my life and makes me perhaps slightly more vulnerable than perhaps some people because I'm depressive. So, kind of like the eggshell skull person that we talk about in law, right? This hypothetical person with really brittle bones and this really brittle skull that, the least touch on them will cause massive physical repercussions, right? In the idea of battery, it's like you kind of take the victim as you find them, right? And it's like, well, for better or worse, I have perhaps a somewhat compromised or somewhat uh, impacted emotional system, which, by the way, is getting better. It's getting better. So we're improving. We're making progress. We're heading on the right path. We're moving forward in our lives. We are replacing weakness with strength on a slow basis, but we're getting there, heading in the right direction. But, it's a thing. So the chat's like, you're weak. And I'm like, well, a little bit. Yeah, I'm also fat. That's why I'm going to the gym and all the rest of it. So, yeah. So it's just, it's just an interesting dynamic with the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I'm going to the gym so I won't be such a fat ass. I'm doing things to improve my life, like comedy classes, improv classes, doing the stand-up class that I'm doing at the end of the month, which I'm kind of scared about because I don't understand the first thing about stand-up, which is part of the reason to take the class in the first place. But I feel like I have such a low understanding of it. I'm a little bit intimidated by the very concept of it. But, we press on. And then I have this meeting tonight to talk about this Meisner School of Acting and whether or not that's a good idea for Uncivil. So we're trying to make progress in the right direction. So, give me a break, I guess. And they sometimes people in chat or other people's chats were like, oh, Uncivil Laws chat is just a hug fest. I'm like, bitch, you're in my house. Okay? You're in my house. This is my channel. You're in my chat. You're in my house, bitch. Okay? I want you to behave a certain way when you're in my house. Okay? I want you to behave a certain way and not, mock me and deride me and, be an asshole because you're in my house. And so I'm going to lay down the law because you're my guest and my channel. And I appreciate that you're here, but I'm not going to allow you to be a little asshat. So that's my view of the thing. And Nick's over here like, well, at my house, I like the asshattery, which is fine because it's Nick's house. He's allowed to like the asshattery. It works for him, apparently. Who am I to tell him how he lives in his own home? He loves it. Apparently, it makes him happy in his life, and it gives him the jollies. Who am I to tell him he's wrong? I'm no one to tell him he's wrong. In some ways, I admire it. In some ways, I admire it because Nick is kind of the person I wish I was in a lot of ways. He has a wife who loves him. He has children. He has a financial stable footing. He has a nice house. Been there. He has a nice sensibility. He has a fan base. He's a success. He's everything I wish I was. And to some degrees, I'm not. But, that being the case, whatever he is and whatever I'm, trying to reach to is not where I am right now. So we're trying to make progress as we go. We're trying to make progress as we go and trying to work out things. But yeah, you're in my house. You're in my house, and yes, I'm going to expect you to behave with a certain level of respect to me and fellow members of the chat because it's what I want. And if you don't like that, piss off and go to someone else's chat who wants something else. There are lots of people's chats who want lots of different things, or lots of people who like to live different ways. Go find one of them. Stop trying to make me into what you wish I was, or stop trying to make my chat into what you wish it was. It's like I'm the guest. You're like the worst Karens ever, some of you people. It's like I'm going to come into your house and demand that you change everything for me. Some of you people out there are just asshole Karens, and you don't know it. It's like I'm going to go into someone else's chat and demand they accommodate me, and then when they don't accommodate me, I'm going to go all Karen about it in someone else's chat and talk about how Uncivil was mean to me because he didn't want me to be a little bitch in his own stream. So, yeah. So that's all good stuff. So, yeah. So that being said, I'm, of course, happy to talk to Nick. And I look forward to speaking with him, which my bet is it won't happen before Anime Matsuri because Nick is really bad at responding to text messages and phone calls. So we may have to do this live. Fuck it, we'll do it live at Anime Matsuri. We'll get a table. It'll be great. We'll do a table. We'll have a little debate with people watching. and there'll be some jokes and some drinks and whatever, and whatever. We'll press on with our lives. It's all good. So yeah, it's all good in the hood. And also, of course, just generalized shout out, of course, once again to our mods, Sandy and Rose and Kestrel and others who are never expected to be here, but we do appreciate when they're here. And just a kind reminder to my mods, just in case they needed to hear it, you are allowed to have a life. And to the extent that this is getting in the way of, your life, take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. I appreciate that you're here and all, but, please don't let this be a substitute for whatever else it is that you need to do in your life. Take care of yourself, please. And also shows the mod some loves. $10 from Baxton Heaps. Morning, Kurt. How are you doing? Doing pretty good. Thank you for asking right now. As my chat. Come on, scroll, baby. There we go. Any advice for going through imposter syndrome while knowing I'm an invaluable member of the team? I'm 20, the youngest member of the entire team, and a high school dropout. Yeah, imposter syndrome can be a real problem. Imposter syndrome can be a real problem. It's like, I don't really belong here. I'm not really worthy of being here, but you're there. So, just do the best you can. Just be the best version of yourself. If you feel like there's a good motivation for you, there's a good way to deal with imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're unworthy to be there, why not make yourself more worthy? That's a good answer, right? Why not make yourself more worthy? Why not strive to improve yourself? I don't really belong here. I'm not really worthy of being here. Hold on, my dad is calling me. Hold on, guys, talk amongst yourselves. Sorry, I'm back. Once again, that we need to say this, but I will say this again for the record on tape, just so it's clear. Martin, Andrew's son, Jackie, whatever you're calling yourself today, you are not welcome on this channel. You are to cease and desist any and all communication on this channel. You are to cease and desist any and all communication on this channel, either in the live chat or in the YouTube comments, or to cease, and you are also to cease and desist any and all communication through any social network of mine: Discord, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Cease and desist. You are not welcome. I've made it clear a number of times you are not welcome. Your continued communication, despite my insistence that you stop communicating, is harassment. Stop. Stop. You are not welcome here. Go away. I don't want to hear from you. Stop. Cease and desist. This is my channel. You are not welcome here. Go away. Anyways, as I was saying earlier, before my dad interrupted me to let me know that the weather in his house is a little bit rough right now, and I had to let him know. As I was saying before about the whole imposter syndrome thing, one of the ways you could respond to this is by making yourself better, which is always a good thing to do just inherently anyway. So if you're feeling like you're unworthy, make yourself more worthy. Make yourself more worthy by trying to increase your skill set, increase your abilities, increase your talent, looking for ways to improve yourself. Self improvement is good. So you can use the imposter syndrome as a motivator to help improve yourself so that you'll feel less like an imposter. Or at least you'll give yourself additional skills, which are also valuable in their own right. So there's a solution to the imposter syndrome. Make yourself better. You know? Yeah. All right. What else should we talk about right now before we get into the legal news roundup? PETA says or Pieta, I guess, says self improvement is good, but there's innate worth we have irrespective of our skills and talents. We can have worth just for being us. Yeah, but that is uh all right. Let me try to help you a little bit on that one. That's a little bit like telling a person who's in depression to just stop being depressed. Um, I appreciate and all that you think that people have self-worth inherently, but this person has problems with perceptions of their own self-worth. So basically, what you just said without realizing it is, hey, just have more perception of your self-worth, which is a little bit like telling a depressed person, hey, just stop being depressed. Yeah. So that doesn't really work. Just start being happy. Just start being depressed. Just realize that you have inherent self-worth and you don't need to do anything. That's not particularly helpful. Uh, you know, uh with all due respect. So I try to go with a different direction. Rather than say you have inherent self-worth, how about like use your own perception of self-worthlessness as a motivator to get more skills so that you'll then feel like you have more worth because you're increasing your worth by increasing your skill set. So hopefully you'll feel better about it because you have more things. And then you'll feel better. And I'm using it as a motivator to like do something that might help correct the problem. So your suggestion is a little bit yeah. Yeah, your suggestion is a little bit yeah. So yeah, your suggestion is a little bit yeah. I've been doing Lexapro for about a couple months at this point, and seems to have been the most helpful thing so far. So yeah, yeah. All right. You can't go to Europe anymore, Americans. The European Union has put in place new restrictions when it comes to Americans. So your ability to just get on a plane and go to Europe, not so much anymore. So that American passport is suddenly a lot less valuable. The American passport has been one of the most valuable in the world because you don't have to get a visa to go visit to most countries in the world. You can just get on a plane with your passport and just go. But now the entire European Union wants to make it harder for Americans to visit Europe. So that's very sad and very disappointing. So the American passport is somewhat less valuable than it used to be. So let's learn a little bit more about this. Starting in 2024, the American passport is less valuable for the 30 European countries that are part of the EU because you'll need authorization in advance to go with the European Travel Information and Authorization System. The European Travel and Information System is quite similar to existing travel requirements and reflect existing fears of terrorism. So now you have to do an extra thing. You can't just get on a plane and go. You have to do a thing. All right, so let's learn a little bit more about this. While some media outlets are taking a cue from the European Union's travel site, which calls it a visa, and therefore calling it a visa, they want you to think it's not a visa. So is it a visa? Well, they say yes, and they also say no. So that's exciting. So is it a visa? It depends on your point of view, I suppose. Dan Hamilton, who is a foreign policy guy for Brookings, says it's not a visa. Okay. He says it's an electronic entry point authorization for countries that are currently visa-free, which sounds suspiciously like a kind of visa. I mean, you have to get it in advance of going there, right? You can't just show up. You can't just show up at the border, as it were, and be like, here, American passport, let me in your country. You have to get permission in advance. It may be somewhat more simple than perhaps a full-fat visa, but it's permission in advance, which sounds suspiciously like a kind of visa to me. So it depends on the eye of the beholder, I guess. Even the European Commission has said as much, writing it's not a visa, but rather an automated IT system, which still sounds a little bit like a visa because you have to get it in advance. Whatever you want to call it, the form is not what you'd seek if you want to try to work or live in Europe, but rather what you need for a short-term trip. So this is just your, travel visa to be able to go visit things. 90-day trips within a 100-day period. So would you like to go to Europe and, look at the Eiffel Tower or something for less than 3 months? You need this permission in advance, which is totally not a visa. Okay. The new requirements have apparently been years in the making, stemming back to a rise of terrorism fears from 9/11. So they're taking a long time to implement this, I would note. If 9/11 is the concern, it's been a hot minute since 9/11, but okay. It's very similar to the program the US implemented. So perhaps this is just payback, or perhaps this is just reciprocity, which again took them a hot minute. So the Europeans, at least from their point of view, have had to do something very similar to come to the US. So the EU is all about how turnabout is fair play. Okay. At the heart of the system is apparently a method to try to track who's coming and going. EU law enforcement authorities arrested 388 suspects for terrorism offenses in 2021, which I'm not quite sure under what circumstances they arrested them, because I'm not quite sure what it has to do with visas or permission or whatever we're calling it. So we're arresting people for terrorism. I mean, okay, the US arrests people for terrorism. Not quite sure what that necessarily has to do in and of itself with an airport, but all right. The European Commission says the system may have added the impact of cutting down on illegal immigration. But one thing it's trying not to do is deter tourism in general, which, okay, so fine. They still want you to visit, but they'd like you to fill out a form in advance and get permission, which is totally not a visa. Okay. Crowded cities, inflated airfare, and extreme heat disasters may all be making headlines this summer, but many European countries are still depending on tourism revenue to help them bounce back from the pandemic, which, yeah, we'd like to have some of that money because people weren't traveling very much because we locked everyone in their homes for 2 years, somewhat hurt the travel, and we'd like people to come back to Europe, but only if they ask nicely. And the pandemic is one of these reasons it was delayed, because, well, there's no need for a system to have people come into your country when no one's allowed to come into your country. So when the visa requirements are don't come, you don't really need a lot more. So that solved problems for a little while. Another part of this is simply the pace in which the European Parliament and the Commission works. They're ending their term and pushing through a lot of these directives. And getting 30 countries to agree on anything can take a long amount of time. So since the UK is not part of the EU, I guess you can still go to the UK as much as you ever want. So London is still an option, but less so with Paris or something. The European Union's website says authorization will start in 2024, but they haven't clarified a specific date. And if you're a betting man and say to yourself, this is not going to start in 2024, I think you're right. This reminds me of Real ID when it comes to we're going to require it on planes. And the date just keeps getting pushed back and back and back and back. Yeah. Martin, who is still not welcome, says, I need to apologize to Nicholas. I'm wrong on the Montegraph situation. You're still not welcome. Please cease and desist talking. You are not welcome. Please stop. You are engaged in criminal harassment. You are continuing to persist despite being told you're not welcome. You're engaged in criminal harassment. Stop. Check yourself. The European Union website says new authorization will start in 2024, but hasn't clarified a specific date. A press spokesman for the European Union's travel arm did not respond to NPR with any specific information. And similarly, a spokesman for the State Department told NPR the U.S. government's website for international travel would be updated once the regulation goes into effect, but didn't specify when that would be, which, who knows at this point. Frankly, I'd be surprised if it starts on time. Me too. I'd be surprised if it starts in 2024 or possibly 2025 or some other date. Yeah. So who needs to apply for this approval? Basically, all passport holders from 60 countries who can currently go to the EU without a visa. So there was a group of people who didn't need a visa of any kind, including the Americans. And now they need whatever this is. But it's not a visa, but it's permission in advance. They need to get this authorization for the trip. That would be about 1.4 billion people. These are 30 European countries that are impacted by the Schengen area. 27 European countries, many of which are part of the European Union, that agreed to ease border restrictions. So if you want to go to any member country that's part of that system, which is somewhat distinct from the EU, then I guess you need this new thing. These countries include top vacation spots like France, Italy, and Spain. Other countries on the list include Romania, Bulgaria, and Cyprus, which are all trying to become part of this Schengen area soon as well. So they're not currently members, but they'd like to be. And so we're going to make them part of this system as well. All right, so how to get this approval? The application isn't open yet, so it's kind of a little speculative. But the European Union says that when it is, all that will be necessary will be to fill it out via web portal or mobile phone application. You'll all be asked to share personal information such as date of birth, parents' name, and details about your current occupation and previous criminal convictions. You also need to share a passport that's not set to expire in less than 3 months, which incidentally, by the way, just in case those of you who don't know, you really shouldn't travel on a passport that has less than 6 months because some countries don't let it. They don't allow you to come in with a passport that has less than 6 months. So you probably shouldn't be trying to run this close because if you do, you might have a problem. So make sure to renew your passport with some time to spare. You also have to pay a fee for this of about $8. And then if you want to play it safe, you have to apply it well in advance of the trip. Saying most applications are processed within minutes, which questionable. Decisions are delivered within 4 days. So apparently, trying to apply as you're sitting at customs is not going to work. But it could take up to 14 days if you request to supply additional information and 30 days if you're invited for an interview, which, yeah. Those denied the application can appeal, but that process could be even lengthier. The European Union says that the approval will stay valid for 3 years or until the next passport you used in your application expires. So you can get this permission once every 3 years, and then that's something else to keep track of. When was the last time you got this permission? I can see this being a real issue with people thinking that they had something that was lasting longer and let the dates expire. So that's going to be super fun. Those with the approval can stay in the European Union for 90 days within any 100-day period. So you can leave and come back, but you cannot stay within the confines of the country. So I guess you need to do a brief stopover in the UK. And then you can come back if you want to stay for 6 months. So you can't stay for 6 months. You have to spend a day in the UK. 1 day in the UK, somewhere in between, I guess. So what happens if you don't apply and try to travel to Europe? They won't let you board, and if they do, they won't let you in the country. So it's not going to go well. So something to keep track of for sure. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story of these new requirements to travel to Europe, which is not a visa, but you need permission in advance, and you have to fill out a form, and it could take 14 days or 3 months or 6 months or some other period of time to grant it. And so you need to get that in advance, and this is totally going to be a thing. I can see this being a thing, and I can see a lot of people Karening to a lot of people at a lot of airports in the near future. Whenever this goes into effect, it's supposed to go into effect 2024, but if it actually goes into effect in 2024, I will donate $5 to charity because no, it's not happening. So we'll see whenever this is supposed to happen, at least for the moment. That brings us to the end of discussion of this story. All right. All kinds of good things. All right. Let's see what else we got today. All right. So this is just a brief blurb story. Not a lot to say here, but just interesting note. The head of the WWE, Vince McMahon, is apparently being investigated by US law enforcement. Not clear exactly why, but that's normal during an investigation. The government isn't going to go out of its way typically to tell you why you're being investigated. Sometimes they will, but sometimes not. And we're in a world of we're not sure what's exactly going on. But the US government has subpoenaed McMahon and tried to get search warrants. So let's learn a little bit more about this story. Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment said on Wednesday that federal law enforcement executed a search warrant and served a subpoena to Vince McMahon last month, though no charges have been brought against him yet. So they're looking for something. So they put a subpoena for some documents and they executed a search warrant against him. So that would get my attention. Something might be going on. We're not quite sure what, but yeah. WWE, which reported its second quarter results, said McMahon had been on medical leave after spinal surgery. The former CEO and chairman of WWE returned to the company board in January to help forge a deal with Endeavor Group, mixed martial art franchise, to form a new publicly listed entertainment value at about $21 billion. So this could be information relating to the merger, or it could be something else. But when you're thinking to yourself, search warrant, you're thinking criminality. So this could be non-criminal, I suppose. But it would get my attention. He had retired in July of last year against allegations of misconduct and paid $17.4 million to the company to cover costs relating to an investigation. So his own company investigated him, and then he resigned and paid $17.4 million of his own money to defray the investigation cost. He was investigated by the WWE board for agreements to pay $12 million over the past 16 years, apparently to suppress allegations of sexual misconduct and infidelity. which, to the extent he's using company money to deal with personal problems. Yeah. So are we looking for some sort of charges relating to embezzlement, maybe taking corporate money and using them for a personal expense? So maybe embezzlement is the idea. Well, we'll see. McMahon is credited with transforming WWE from a regional player into a global giant. The second quarter revenue rose 25% to $410 million from a year earlier. So they're doing pretty well for themselves as a company. Shares of the company were up 2%, having risen 52% this year. So apparently it was a very good business to invest in, due in large part to international trade. So there's something going on here. We don't know exactly what's going on, and we're not even 100% sure it's necessarily criminal, but search warrant seems to suggest it strongly. You can get a search warrant in a civil context. It's possible, but you know, there's something that's a little bit amiss, and something is wrong here. It also depends if they are using the term search warrant in a legally proper sense, because sometimes they use the wrong word for things, as you know from articles. So I'm being a little bit hesitant because I'm not 100% sure that when it says search warrant, what they mean is search warrant. Because, the news might get it wrong. What a shocker. But anyways, apparently the US government on some level is doing some sort of investigation that might be related potentially to embezzlement. So that's happening, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention because I thought it was interesting. So we'll see if that becomes a thing. All right. And YouTuber who has a few more subscribers than me news, Mr. Beast is in a lawsuit apparently with the virtual restaurant firm that has dealt with Mr. Beast Burger. So Jimmy over here, somewhat successful in his YouTube career, done okay for himself as it relates to the YouTube. Thought maybe he could go outside the YouTube and do some burgers, which apparently also has been somewhat successful. He seems to have done okay for himself, but there is a bit of a dispute as it relates to the quality of the food, or maybe it deals really with just him being sad at business. So there's a whole dispute about the thing. So let's learn a little bit more about what's going on in this case. Let's learn a little bit more about this. Jimmy Donaldson, better known as Mr. Beast, sued the Ghost Kitchen company that's operating his virtual burger franchise because they do have one physical location now, I think, in the Mall of America. And they might have a few other physical locations, so I can't swear to it. But for the vast, vast, vast majority, it has just been a ghost kitchen. It's just a commercial kitchen that does food for lots of people, which, has become increasingly popular, particularly in the pandemic. So a lot of companies do this, which, that's fine. There's kitchens that can prepare all kinds of food and it saves costs. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with a ghost kitchen. But he has said that the food that they're providing is disgusting, revolting, and inedible, thus damaging his reputation. So he says they're not being very good at a ghost kitchen. They're not doing the job very well. The Donaldson Beast Investments has filed a lawsuit with the Southern District of New York against virtual dining concepts and its parent company, seeking declaratory judgment order that Beast Investments has the immediate right to terminate the deal with the company and asking for unspecified monetary damages. So the contract presumably includes some sort of clause dealing with when they can exit the agreement, right? And so he's asking for declaratory relief that this is true. He wants to end the contract. And he's like, well, the contract says I can, so I want an order telling me I'm right so that I don't have to deal with a threat of a breach of contract suit. So I want out of this deal. The company, for its part, responded to the lawsuit by stating that Donaldson had recently attempted to negotiate a new deal to serve his own monetary interests, which, of course, when they refused to accede to the bullying tactics to give up more of the brand to him, he filed this ill-advised and meritorious lawsuit seeking to undermine the brand and terminate his existing contractual obligations without cause. So they say this is just part of a really strong negotiation tactic / extortion. It's like, give me more or we're done. And it's like, we don't want to give you more. And so they're saying he's manufacturing this complaint because he's basically he wanted a better deal, right? So he wants more of the money, which is to be understandable, but he is doing this not because there's something really wrong, but rather he's upset that he didn't negotiate a better deal. The company continues by saying the complaint is riddled with false statements and inaccuracy and a thinly veiled attempt to distract from Donaldson and Beast Investments' breaches of agreements between the parties, including Donaldson's recent false, disparaging statements regarding the brand and VDC, and looks forward to being vindicated in court. So this is just a pissing match over a contract and what's really going on, right? So they negotiated a contract. They say it's because Donaldson wants more. He says it's because their food sucks. So what is the real reason behind this? And now some court somewhere has to adjudicate this out. According to Donaldson's lawsuit, VDC has caused material, irreparable harm to the brand and reputation, not only through abject failure to ameliorate the significant quality control problems for the business, but also through other material breaches of the agreement. So again, Mr. Beast is saying, you breached the contract. The contract includes provisions for me to get out if you do, so I want out. The company, he says, has repeatedly denied Mr. Beast's valuable approval rights by posting his name, image, and brand on social media and elsewhere without first obtaining written approval and consent. So they're using his brand, his name, his likeness in ways not permitted by the agreement. Moreover, according to Donaldson lawsuit, to be clear, while this business has made millions of dollars, Mr. Beast has not received a dime. That seems difficult to believe. Why would Mr. Beast not have received any money? Is it all equity for him? Maybe. I mean, I guess that's possible, right? So maybe he hasn't received a dime because maybe he's being paid in equity, which, fair enough, I suppose, right? So what do we mean exactly by he hasn't been paid a dime? I mean, he has to have consideration of some kind for this to be a contract, right? There has to be consideration flowing to him. So if it's not money, what is it? What is the consideration? So him saying he hasn't received a dime, is he supposed to receive a dime? If so, that could be a problem. If not, then why are we talking about it? Okay. The Beast Investment Group against VDC claims more than one half of the virtual restaurants have less than 2 out of 5 stars, well below the median score of 4 stars, and there are literally thousands of negative reviews, articles, and comments from people who are deeply disappointed by the fact Mr. Beast will put his name on the product. So apparently the Yelp reviews have not been kind to the Mr. Beast burgers. The suit cites numerous examples of complaint with Mr. Beast burger, including a tweet that said, Mr. Beast brand launched on 2020 and expanded to 1,700 global locations by end 2022. With the exception of the first physical Mr. Beast restaurant opened at New Jersey's America Dream Mall, I thought it was Mall of America, but I guess I was mistaken. The chain, or unless there's also 2, because maybe there is, because I'm pretty sure there's one Mall of America. So maybe there's 2 of them. The chain operates as a virtual brand run out of partner kitchens with order available for delivery and pickup via only food delivery services. VDC asserts that contrary to Donaldson's claim that Beast Burger has damaged the brand, the notoriety has grown exponentially over the life of the brand, in part because of the brand itself. The company also added it takes quality and customer reviews very seriously and constantly strives to improve quality and customer satisfaction, and any negative reviews reflect the experience and opinion of only a very small minority of customers. So some dispute over what the social media reports mean. The Orlando-based VDC says it's retained the law firm of Greenberg Traurig LLC, good law firm, to represent its interests in the dispute. We've hoped that Donaldson would act honorably. Instead, he's elevated greed over his word and truth. He'll face consequences in court when VDC files claims against him. Okay. Mr. Beast is one of the most followed YouTube creators on the platform with 172 million subscribers counting. So between me and him, there's only a difference of 172 million subscribers. So he's doing a little bit better than me. So yeah. For 2021, he was estimated to be the highest earning creator on YouTube, amassing a fan base of big money stunts including the viral hit of redoing Squid Game and also doing some charitable work. So if you guys happen to know 172 million people, could you get them to subscribe to my channel? Because that'd be great. I could use the additional subscribers. Please talk to somebody who will talk to somebody who will talk to somebody else who will subscribe. All right. Thus, that you never heard of him, really? Okay. Thus, that brings us to the end of the case for the moment about Jimmy Donaldson, also known as Mr. Beast, pictured here, who had launched a virtual enterprise of burgers, which I had understood had been fairly successful, but he says has not lived up to the expectations he expected. So he's disappointed with the brand. So that is now progressing, and we will see how that goes. At least for the moment, that brings us end of discussion of this story. You only have a vague idea of who he is. He produces some really good stuff. I mean, he certainly spends a lot of money on his videos. You know, he spends a lot of money on his videos, making that production quality super, super high. So, and he's a multiple millionaire. So, I am not. $17,000 locations within 2 years is crazy scaling. Yeah, but they're virtual kitchens. So in this context, that's less scary, right? Because these are ghost kitchens that do a lot of service for a lot of people. So they aren't real locations. So it's not really the same as like having 1,700 physical stores. So in this context, 1,700 stores is not as a big number as it might appear, because he's just borrowing ghost kitchens that exist for making all kinds of food. I've had Mr. Beast burgers before and found them to be adequate. So I can't, I don't, you know, they haven't changed my world, but you know, they're fine burgers. All right. Social Blade says he makes $600 million of revenue a year. That sounds a little high, but not by much. It's, well, that could be. No, that sounds a little high. It's probably on the order of, I would think it's like half that or maybe less, but he's doing well for himself. He's probably clearing at least $10 million every month, which would be $120 million a year. He's doing okay. You know, he's doing fine. Yeah. You think he clears $1 million a day? 365 million? He clears $1 million a day? Could be. What do you think, Fishby? Well, I think that Jimmy is an interesting guy, and he has a lot of people that like him, and he hasn't put Fishbees on the menu. So I really appreciate that he hasn't come after me or my friends. So I like him a lot, because sometimes people go after the fish bees, and I just want to go swim throughout the ocean in peace. Leave me alone. I'm a fish bee. In this one time at band camp news, a former assistant band director has been sentenced to prison after secretly recording students saying, quote, "Nothing was stopping me." So, you know, he might have behaved in a little bit of an inappropriate way when it came to his students. Let's learn a little bit more about this guy. A former assistant band director at a middle school will spend the next 3 decades of his life behind bars for possessing certain photographs of children in a somewhat exploitative way, and also taking some photos of his own of minors in a way that might be deemed to be a little bit suspect. Tyler Dan Townsend of 33 told the Kyle Police Department in Texas, which is very near Austin, I know where it is, that he did not initially think he was doing anything wrong during his web activity, during the affidavit. So he thought this was totally, totally cool. Just a little bit of photographs of his students, just showing their talents. And some other people had some objection to the nature of the photographs that he was taking and possessing. He said, quote, "In the moment, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong because nothing was stopping me. It was just there." Well, it's nice to know that whether it's wrong or not depends on whether or not anyone's trying to stop you in the moment. So if no one's trying to stop you in the moment, it means it's totally okay. That's how that works, apparently. Authorities apparently discovered some 200 images of children that were somewhat inappropriate for their content between his two laptops and his phones. The 200 children photos, not exactly what a band director should probably be having on their phone and laptop. Then also there were some photos that he took. Several electronic devices were seized from his home during the execution of warrants. After reviewing the devices, they found what we have deemed invasive visual recordings of unknowing students that were on his cell phone, including, apparently, some upskirt photos of girls in his middle school band. So that's fun and exciting. He apparently was taking some upskirt photos of middle schoolers, which means that they're somewhere between 12 and 14, there or thereabouts. And some people thought, you know what? We really don't like the band director taking secret upskirt photos of the 12 to 14-year-old girls. We think that's bad. He thinks it's good. There is a difference of opinion, it seems. He admitted that he had an entire process and scheme to take these photographs. He advised that he downloaded an app on his phone, which would black out the screen when he used his camera. He would then just kneel down to tie his shoe, set down something, drop his phone, or otherwise find a way. Townsend, who worked at the city of Buda, also near my home of Austin, I know where that is, took the photos in an array of locations. These included the band hall, private band practice, the track and field area, a high school, and a water park. Good. He had done some work at the high school, police said. Townsend was first employed by Hayes School District at the Dahlstrom Middle School in 2015 after he passed a comprehensive fingerprint-based background check required of all employees. Townsend, the assistant band director at the Dahlstrom Middle School in Buda, directed campus symphonic and jazz bands and percussion. He also assisted with Hayes High School marching band when Dahlstrom was a feeder middle school towards the high school. So the middle school would go to that particular high school. So he worked also with the students in the high school as they, graduated from middle school into high school. He'd continue to work with them in ways that they may not have appreciated at the time. The Hayes Consolidated Independent School District put Townsend on leave in 2020 after he told cops about the investigation and resigned 4 days later. The fallout from this betrayal of trust culminated in Hayes court last Tuesday. He pled guilty to 10 counts of possession of the images of the children and 7 counts of invasive visual recording and was sentenced to 30 years in prison for all this. So that's how that played out in a Texas courtroom. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story of Tyler, pictured here, who was a band director for middle school in Kyle and Buda. And he liked the images of the children. He seemed to particularly like the images of the 12 to 14-year-olds. And he liked also doing his own artistic expression to make sure that he had the photos that he particularly wanted, including by doing some secret upskirt photos of the 12 to 14-year-olds that he presumably used for his, personal research. And we found these photos and also 200 photos that were even more explicit involving children. And, we have frowned on that. So we have frowned to the point of, 30 years in prison, and that for the moment brings us end discussion of the story. And now Nate Brody is calling. Hold on, I gotta talk to Nate now. Nate says hi. Nate says hi. Good times. Yeah. Nate was calling to apologize because he said he'd call me back yesterday and then he didn't. And so when he called, he said, I'm so sorry. And I just go, disrespect, disrespect. Because, I'm teasing him because he's my friend. But he was calling me back because he was supposed to call yesterday. I'm like, well, you are in the middle of my streaming time, Nate, right now. So now's not exactly the best time to talk, but that's okay. People want me too much. Yeah. My dad wants to talk to me about the weather. Nate wants to talk to me. I'm popular this morning. All right. Nate is my friend. Nate is my friend. See, the thing is, like, you can tease your friends, right? See, that's the thing. Like, in a relationship, obviously, right? The things you can say to your friend are not things you can necessarily say to a stranger because you have, a relationship in advance. So I get to razz him a little because he knows he's my friend and it's a razz, right? So he can do things and I can do things because we know that we're friends. I know it's deep, right? It's real deep. So it's like I could say, he can pick up the phone, he can call me and be like, "I'm so sorry about last night," and I can just say, "Disrespect, disrespect," and he knows it's a joke because, of course, it is. Wow, it's nice having friends. It's nice having friends. And Nate, unlike Nick Ricada, calls me back. Perhaps too much in Nate's case. Nate calls me probably 3 or 4 times a week. So Nate is much better about calling me back than loser Nick Ricada, who can't return a phone call to save his life. Okay. I wanted to give food to the homeless, but the city said I couldn't news. Houston ticketed a man for giving food to the homeless. And he's like, that's dumb. So he's been found not guilty for feeding the homeless. And now he wants to pursue a federal lawsuit. So let's learn a little bit more about this. A Houston man who was ticketed for volunteering to help feed the homeless, what a bastard, has been declared not guilty by a jury. He was ticketed for giving food to the homeless outside a public library. Hey, homeless people, here's some free food. Would you like some free food? It's good. And the police are all like, no giving food to the homeless. What a creep you are. So he's been found not guilty by a jury in a criminal court trial. And he is now challenging the local laws that regulate where and how they can give money to the homeless. Because they're like, dude, I want to give food to the homeless. It's my food. I want to give it away. It's my property, damn it. I want to be able to give it away. I should have the right of alienating my own food. And Houston's all over here like, nah. So last Friday, the jury unanimously handed down the not guilty verdict to Philip Picone, who was ticketed on March 3rd for the crime of feeding the homeless outside the Houston Public Library. Now Picone has launched a federal civil rights challenge to find the law unconstitutional. Another volunteer also filed a civil rights suit against the city in the Southern District of Texas. Per the city's charitable feeding ordinance enacted in 2012, organizers need to get permission from property owners if they feed more than 5 people at a time. So 5 people, okay. 6 people, right out. So you can't do it. The group, which is called Food Not Bombs, has operated a food service station outside the downtown location near the library 4 nights a week for 20 years. But the ordinance wasn't enforced until a notice was posted outside the library in March. So they've been doing this for 20 years. 20 years outside the library. They've had a space. Would you like some food? We'd like to give you food. Please take our food. And the law libraries are like, nah, we don't want to give you food. Okay. On Friday, July 28th, a jury unanimously held down the not guilty verdict for volunteering to help feed the homeless. Picone and 45 other people involved in this vast criminal conspiracy received tickets for $254 per person for this alleged crime, but Picone was the first case to actually go to trial. The attorney Paul Kabosh, who represents 37 of these criminal miscreants, argues that the ordinance goes against their right of freedom of speech, says the laws is absurd, and criminalizes a Samaritan for giving away. What I'm hoping for is vindication. I'm hoping for not guilty. If you're trying to affect the lives of the homeless and trying to make their situation better, you don't do that by attacking the Samaritan. The law is not about the homeless, it's about the Samaritan. The volunteer group serves meals to the homeless in the downtown area of Houston. The city of Houston cited public health and safety concerns as the reasoning behind ticketing the volunteers, saying the increase in homeless individuals outside the library has caused threats and violent incidents for visitors and family, which, one could respond to by dealing with the threats and the violence, because those are people that are behaving badly. What are we trying to do? We're trying to say, basically, that giving away food to the homeless is a public nuisance. Wow. Your enterprise is creating a volatile atmosphere and is a public nuisance because you're giving away food for free. Wow. The city of Houston's attorney said in a statement the municipality will continue to vigorously pursue violations of the ordinance. So they think, this is totally fine. It's a health and safety issue for the protection of Houston residents. There have been complaints and incidents regarding congregation of homeless around the library, even during off hours. The city has carefully balanced competing concerns, ensuring that through its own programs, which I'm sure are super, super great, and through significant allocation of funds, there are alternative nearby feeding locations that have been well attended and well received. So the city's all over here like, these people don't need to give away food. We give away plenty of food. There's plenty of places to go away to get food. Why would the homeless need this food? Well, the homeless seem to think they want this food. So, there's that. In the State of the City address, the mayor said they wanted the group to relocate and retake downtown Central Library to make it more wholesome for families and kids. But the group involved characterized these concerns as public safety as disingenuous, saying, let's just be honest. If they're not getting food from volunteers, they're getting food from a trash bin. They're getting stuff they find on the street. So whenever they talk about health and safety, that's a red herring. Yeah, our food is probably better than the food that they're just finding wherever. So, we'd like to continue giving away the food as we have for literally 20 years. Before ticketing volunteers, the city requested the group move their food service down the street to the old Houston police headquarters, but one volunteer told the news they did not need a place where they can see jail cells and barbed wire because it's a whole police headquarters. So they think that venue is not necessarily appropriate. A lot of people we share food with are not comfortable bringing themselves to the old police station. They may be picked out and given special treatment by the police who happen to be around. We do not need a place where they can see jail cells and barbed wire. A lot of people we share food with are not comfortable bringing themselves there. In a State of the City address, the mayor said he wanted the group to retake downtown. This is a major asset of Houston. We have a few too many homeless folks and feeding programs in front of Central Houston. My God, there are too many people trying to give away food. Non-perishable food donations can be seen outside the Houston Public Library. The mayor's office did not respond immediately on Tuesday to an email seeking comment. At a press conference following the Friday verdict, the civil rights attorney, Randall Killeen, said the jury's unanimous decision indicates the overwhelming majority of the populace thinks that, feeding the homeless might be okay. In a 2021 federal appeals court, sided with Florida chapter of Foods Not Bomb in a similar case, so this is not the first time. The Coalition for Homeless in Houston counted 3,200 homeless people in the city with only 1,500 sleeping facilities. So kind of not enough to go around. This group trying to make a difference, and we don't really like you giving away food. Please stop giving away food. Okay. Thus, that brings us to the end of a Houston man who recently was on trial for the grave crime of giving away food. It appears that he's part of a at least 40-person large criminal conspiracy that are part of a group of people dedicated to the mission of giving away food. My God. And he was the first person to be charged as part of this group, which is engaged in this corrupt enterprise. Surprised we're not charging him with RICO at this point, because who would give away food for free for 20 years to the homeless unless they had nefarious ulterior motives by just giving away the food to people who need it? Wow. So, yeah. So he is filing suit in federal court to say I should be allowed to give away food. And at least for the moment, that brings us to the end of discussion of this story. When is the Kurt versus Nick SmackDown? I don't know. I don't think there's going to be a SmackDown. Nick will explain his position to me, and we will discuss the position, and we will have a thoughtful discussion about it. So the SmackDown will mostly take place in the form of, hey, Nick, this doesn't quite seem right, and Nick explaining it to me, and me either saying, oh, okay, that's right, or no, I still think you're wrong, and here's why. And then we'll have a discussion about it. So that will be the form of the SmackDown. Exciting. You can tune in for that. You want to find a way to tax the free food? Yeah, taxing free is hard. What do you want to do? You want to tax the homeless for? I guess you could. Technically, it qualifies as income. That's good. So we want to say that the homeless people are receiving something that has a fair market value and therefore it's income. Are they declaring it on their federal taxes? Wow, exciting. The U.S. government wants 10% of your sandwich. All right. The food was already taxed when it was purchased, called a gift, no taxes. Well, that doesn't quite work. Just because it was taxed once doesn't mean we can't tax it again. You should know better. Everything gets taxed at every stage of it. Everything gets taxed at every level. Money gets taxed multiple different times. The same money will get taxed over and over and over again because the government likes taxes. So yeah, you know better than that. As for a gift, that doesn't necessarily preclude it from being taxable, because it might be because it's below gift giving limits, But it is an asset that is, so we could look up the finer points of the tax code, but whatever. Nick will be having with his wife and have friends at Matsuri having fun. First of all, that's me. I'm his friend. Last thing he'll want to do is debate. No, I think he'll probably want to because it'll be funny. It'll be funny. I can already see it happening in my head, right? I can see it happening in my head. We'll do because it'll be basically like a live show, like you did in Vegas. It'll be funny, right? We'll have a little live show, maybe a little table with some microphones, and we'll have a little thing with a live show with people watching. It could be funny. So I think the odds of him wanting to do a debate at Matsuri are not bad. So first of all, he'll be hanging out with me because I am his friend. Second of all, the debate will be hilarious. So I think the odds of him wanting to do it are pretty good. We'll see. I can already see it happening in my head. Yeah. And Nick just bringing that classic Nick comic stylings to me, and basically me playing the straight man because that's my natural role. So me playing the straight man and Nick doing his classic comic stylings and basically kind of clowning on me a little bit, and me playing the straight man with an audience watching in live and it being broadcast. Sounds pretty good. It sounds workable. In Women Are Women and Men Are Men news, the state of Oklahoma has recently put into law the Women's Bill of Rights because Oklahoma knows what a woman is and would like to protect women from the doppelganger interloper wannabes who are trying to interfere with their spaces. So Oklahoma has passed a law to grant women, which we know what they are, special protection because women should have rights too. So let's get started with this. The Oklahoma governor has signed the Women's Bill of Rights into law in a move that's blasted by some as sexist and transphobic because we actually recognize what women are. That's an interesting view of sexism. It is sexism to note that women are a thing. And okay. Joining the Faulkner focus shortly thereafter, the governor sat beside a former NCAA athlete to discuss how the order will solidify distinctions between men and women based on sex and identify spaces where they are to be separate, including locker rooms, restrooms, crisis centers, domestic violence centers, and prisons, among others. It's even weird that we have to say this in today's age, the governor said, but to us, it's just common sense that we have to do this to define what a woman is and protect women. 50 years ago, Title 11 was signed. Now it feels like they're trying to erode that. I think he means Title 9. Unless he said Title 9 and the newspaper doesn't know how to write 9. Because what they wrote was 11. I'm guessing the governor said 9 and then the newspaper mistyped. So someone's wrong here. I don't think there is a Title 11. So, yeah. The law said it is to bring clarity, certainty, and uniformity to state laws, according to the text, and prevent situations like the former one of the NCAA athlete and other swimmers who underwent a process where they were forced to undress in a locker room in the presence of so-called transgender athlete Leah Thomas, who is actually a dude. The former University of Pennsylvania swimmer told Congress recently the incident adversely impacted women who were suffering from trauma relating to sexual assaults. So, there's that. We're taking a stand against this out of control gender ideology that's eroding the very foundations of our society, the governor said while signing the bill. Well, I'm kind of with you on this one, Oklahoma, because I think that men are men, and women are women, and there are actually some differences, and these differences are rooted in biology. So, yeah. The state's Democrats have pushed against the law, calling the measure divisive and a homegrown bigotry because it recognizes that men and women are actually things. I have 3 daughters, the governor said. My wife and I have been married for 25 years. I did this for them. I did it for Riley Gaines. I did it for all the young girls in the state of Oklahoma. It's absolutely wrong for them to be forced to change and undress in what should be a safe locker room as they're competing in the presence of biological men. Yeah. Forget the fact that they're having to compete against a biological male, but then change in the locker room. I mean, this is just craziness, and it's not going to happen in Oklahoma. Yeah. Hold on 1 second, please. I just need to take care of something real fast. All right. Let's press on. Was I done with this article? No, I still had more article. Okay, great. I lost my place for a second. Duncan, Idaho gives $5 to say men are men and women are women. Why would you say something so brave? Why would you say something controversial and so brave? Yeah, that's where we are in this thing. That's for sure. Good times. Forget the fact that they're having to compete against a biological male, but then change in the locker room. I mean, it's just craziness, and it's not going to happen in Oklahoma. Let me also make another note. Please. Okay. Where was I again? According to Gaines, she and other female swimmers faced emotional blackmail in response to their complaints about Thomas, who is pictured here. So, yeah. This is bigger than the universities we're seeing in academia. It's corporate America. It's the media. It's the amount of emotional blackmail they put us through to keep it silent, and it's effective. They told us we wouldn't get a job. We wouldn't get into grad school. We'd lose our friends. We'd lose our scholarship. They told us that we'd be murderers if we spoke out because we'd be complicit in a potential death. That's how they kept us silent. That's what it feels like. As if, and if someone, I've been one of the few voices fighting this. That sounds about right, right? If you don't give them what they want, they might harm themselves. And you don't want to be responsible for their death, right? Using that blackmail for sure. The governor said state agencies fail to follow the executive orders. Violators will be removed immediately. They're not going to work in my administration. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story for the moment about Oklahoma signing into law a woman's bill of rights, trying to bring an end to this gender ideology nonsense, joining governors in Texas and Florida recently as well as other states like Tennessee, trying to deal with this stuff because it's all gone way, way too far. And the left is over here like you're a bunch of bigots. And if you don't do it, people might harm themselves, and then you're responsible for that because you're not showing them the respect they want and all the rest of it. So, yeah. So it's all kinds of bullshit. And that, for the moment, brings us end of discussion of this story. Okay, let's see. Where are we? We're having a great time over here on Uncivil Law. Oh yeah, I have to remind myself. Note to self, because I had forgotten. I have an appointment at 2 o'clock. I mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again because I've already forgotten while I'm streaming, and I'm so afraid I'm going to forget. It took me like 3 weeks to get this appointment, and so I'm so afraid I'm going to forget. I have a meeting today at 2 o'clock with the director of this Meisner School of Acting, and I'd like to at least give it a try. And so I have to, I have to do this thing, and so yeah. And then I'm supposedly also doing so I have to do that at 2. And then what else am I doing? I have the stand-up classes starting at the end of the month. And yeah, going from there. If I set an alarm on my phone, that's actually a pretty good idea. What if I did that? What if, that's actually a good thing. Thanks, just a small. What if I actually, put an alarm on my phone that reminded me, hey, you need to leave your house. You should get going. Like, a normal person. That would be good. Uh what an interesting idea. What if you put it on your phone so that it like rang and then you would know and you'd remember that you have to go. Wow, that's good shit. All right, thank you. All right, let's do a Florida man story and then we'll chill out some more, I guess. Let's see what's going on in Florida man world. Du- 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 du. Okay, this is bad plan. This is how not to this is this is how not to Karen. This is how not to Karen. Okay. In Florida man story. Hold on one second. Nope. Yeah. In Florida man story, a Florida man missed his flight at his airport, which happens to the best of us. And in response to being told, you can't board your flight because it's kind of late at this point because flight left, he apparently told the people at the airport, "I'm going to blow this shit up." Um, that's not a great thing to say at the airport. Um, Probably less with the threats to blow up things at the airport. Probably a bad plan. Let's learn a little bit more about Florida man. The Trump arraignment will not be televised because it's federal court. So sadly, no. A man who showed up late to his American Airlines flight at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport Monday afternoon expressed displeasure that it was too late for him to make his flight by making a bomb threat, according to authorities. Authorities say that Vincent Sereno, 30, of Lewiston, showed up to the gate, was told the flight was closed, and then enraged said to the gate agent, "I'm going to blow this shit up. I'm going to take you all out." Okay, yeah, that wasn't the right thing to say to the gate agent at the airport. Yeah, sorry, you missed your flight. The gate is closed. I'm gonna blow this shit up. Not the best way to go at the airport. Okay. Okay. Police say that when he attempted to advise the individual of his Miranda rights, he refused to allow him to read him his Miranda rights. Once again, he became engaged and was swearing at me and raising his voice. Well, that's not going to go well. That's spontaneous declaration. That's excited utterance. Yeah, I know. The fact that the police were unable to read your Miranda rights isn't going to preclude them from arresting you or using your statements against you, right? Some people think that Miranda is like this thing that if the police don't do, it means the whole arrest goes invalid. That's not just how that works. Just by way of illustration from Miranda. Okay, the police don't actually have to read you Miranda unless they're going to question you, right? Custodial interrogation. So if the police just want to arrest you, they don't have to read you Miranda at all, right? So the failure to read Miranda is not a problem if they didn't ask you any questions. What if you said some things despite them not asking you questions? Well, that's on you. That's on you, right? If you just start saying shit, then that's on you. Spontaneous declaration, excited utterance. The police didn't violate your rights. They didn't ask you any questions. You just started saying things. So they interrupted Miranda. Is that going to preclude it from being used against him at trial? Not even a little bit. So it's going just that well over here. He appeared in court on Tuesday of charges of making a bomb threat and making a false report of mass destruction of public property. When the judge said he felt that the defendant wasn't facing exactly the right charges, he did a probable cause and ordered him to be given a $10,000 bond and told him not to go on airport property. So the judge thinks maybe the charges that were levied are not perhaps exactly the right charges, perhaps some other charges. But he's like, okay, while we're figuring all that out, how about a $10,000 bond and don't go anywhere near an airport? His attorney said the individual, who's a truck driver, was on his way to go pick up his truck from a repair shop when he missed his flight yesterday. And so, yeah, so going all that well. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story for the moment of Vincent Sereno, pictured here, who has been arrested. And the judge thinks maybe the wrong charges and maybe some other charges, but a $10,000 bond and stay away from an airport while trying to figure out what the right charges are. So, all kinds of exciting. So, it's not going to go well for him. And he's not going to be allowed to fly that airline ever, or possibly any airline, because now he's going to be on a terrorist watch list. So the airline's going to ban him as a matter of their corporate policy. So you can't fly our airline ever. And his odds of being able to fly any airline in the near future are not looking too good because now he's on a terrorist watch list. So that's super exciting. So maybe less with the, making threats at the airport. And that for the moment brings us to the end of discussion of this story. I'm contemplating some sort of food right now. I'm thinking of making some sort of like pepperoni pizza thing, but not pizza, but would be like similar, like some sort of casserole, like a pepperoni pizza casserole or something. I'm not exactly sure what that would be. Maybe I'll look for recipes and maybe make myself some sort of pepperoni pizza like casserole. We could do a cooking with Kurt. That'd be good. Yeah. We could do a cooking with Kurt. So some sort of like, yeah, we'll look for recipes and see what we can find. Hold on one second, please. So much to do, so much time to do things. I'm in good spirits today. All right, took care of that problem. $10 from Duncan, Idaho. Do you see a better counter to the spread of postmodern communism than organized religion? Um, that is way outside my comfort base of doing things. How's the convection oven working for you? I returned it. I returned it. I returned the convection oven. I didn't get enough use out of it to justify its cost. It was a good piece of equipment, but it was not really suitable for my needs. So I gave it a try for the period for Amazon, like 30 days, and then I returned it because I'm like, I can just use a regular oven and accomplish basically all the same things. I don't and To the extent I was using it, I would just use the George Foreman instead, which has been a more reliable piece of kit for me. So I returned it. So air fryers, I think are not for me. A meatball casserole or some kind, yeah, like a meatball pepperoni casserole. Yeah, that's what we're kind of looking at, something like that. Make a pizza on top of tortillas. I've done that before. Yeah. The first question was why you'd use it if you already had an oven. Well, the idea would it be faster and more convenient and stuff like that, and it definitely does it. It just didn't, do as much for me as I thought it would. You know, and people have been telling me forever, get an air fryer, get an air fryer, get an air fryer. I'm like, okay. People have suggested getting an air fryer forever. I'm like, okay, let's just get one and see what happens. And it turned out, I just don't see enough utility in it, so I'll return it. So, we gave it a shot and it just didn't really work for me. And, at some point in the future, I changed my mind. I could buy one again. So maybe at some point in the future, we'll give it another shot, but it just didn't work for me. Yeah, but I already have an Instapot. I already have an oven. I already have a George Foreman. It's like I don't need another piece of equipment, right? It just didn't really serve its needs. Am I trying keto? I'm trying to reduce carbohydrates in general, but not necessarily keto. But I do try to reduce carbohydrates where I can. I'm just trying to eat healthier, generally speaking, cook more and, eat out less. I need a pressure cooker. The Instapot's a pressure cooker. So I have a pressure cooker. So, yeah. The Instapot, it's great. I like it very much. I use it fairly frequently. It's a good piece of kit. I recommend it. All right, I'm going to sign off for now. This has been a good stream, and we'll see what happens from there. And I'm going to return some phone calls. Um, go from there. I've been Uncivil Law. Until later, my friends. I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.